Hopefully hopefully he'll be here soon. All right. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the January 2024 meeting of the St. Mary's County Library Board of Trustees. My name is Michael Dunn. I'm the president of the board. We have 5 of our 7 members here currently, so we do have a quorum. Why don't we go around and do introductions? John, can I ask you to start on Zoom, and then we'll go around the table, starting with Tressa.
Right. I'm John Johnston, Vice President.
Tressa Setlack, Treasurer.
Judith Gwen. Dorothy Waters.
All right. Thank you, everybody. I assume we are good on audio and everything so far?
Just said that the sound is good.
Awesome. Thank you. Great. So then let's move into our agenda. The first item on the agenda is approval of the December 2023 minutes.
Previous minutes be accepted as presented.
Thank you, Dorothy.
Second.
Thank you, Judith. Any discussion? All right. All in favor of the motion to accept the minutes as presented, please say aye. Aye. All right, John, thank you for raising your hand. Helps tally the votes. Any opposed or abstained? Everyone voted aye. The motion passes. The next item on the list is the approval of the monthly expense ledger, the EALs. I will make a motion to approve the EALs as written.
I second.
All right. Thank you for seconding, Dorothy. Any discussion? Hey, Sharon, welcome. All right, we are joined by board member Sharon Fitzsimmons. Great to see you. Happy New Year. We are diving into the EALs. We have a motion on the table to accept them as written, and we are time for discussion. I had a question on page 3. The miscellaneous supplies for Amazon Business for almost $4,600. Can you share more about that?
So that is literally anything we buy from Amazon. It could be some F&E or furniture and equipment. It could be books. It could be generic supplies. We get invoiced for each order that's placed, and I pay them all monthly.
Mm-hmm.
So it's one big payment to Amazon, but we do buy some books from Amazon, anything we can't find from our other vendors. We buy some DVDs, things we can't find from our vendors. We buy our cleaning supplies from them. We occasionally buy chairs or other furniture if it's cheaper on Amazon. So it's a range of things. Now, within QuickBooks, each of those is invoiced individually and I can see what is bought, but the payment, this is just a payment. So it's a one-time payment for all supplies.
So on a budget line item, where does that fit in? Or is it different line items?
It's different line items.
It is different things.
Yes.
Okay.
And so within QuickBooks, so each of those invoices is entered into QuickBooks separately by line items as to where we're being paid. It's just, these are just payments.
Yes, got it.
So they could be grouped in different ways. I can have a payment. Several of these probably are payments that go to dual accounts.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
On page 2, there's on page 2, there's a listing for 5,300 for miscellaneous supplies and events. Is that one credit card payment for multiple charges or a single charge?
That is, again, the same thing as Amazon. We have each of the, not all, but most of the admin staff and each of the branch managers have a credit card. They have to send in what they spent that credit card money on and receipts and justify. And again, the line items are entered on each expense. And then I pay a one-time payment to the credit card each month. So they're all paid as a whole.
All right, thanks.
Judith, I think you had some questions.
Page 2, in the middle is the health insurance Blue Cross, 47,000. And then on page 4 is Blue Cross, 41,000. What's
The
difference here?
so the one on page 2 is for December. It was given to me late by the county. They've been working with Blue Cross on some of the issues that they have on their side. They send me my bill, so it has to go through the county first, and they had some issues. Plus, it was Thanksgiving break, so it came in late. So I didn't pay the December one till December. But generally, we get it the month before. So the one on page 4 is for January.
And then also page 2, below that Care First payment, 2 down says Deer Oaks EAP. Is that Employee Assistance Program?
Yes.
And is this like a monthly service or
So
just when it's used? And is it?
So
and
this
I'm
is
just curious, is it
again,
in
this is
person or virtual?
this is one we share with the county.
Okay.
And the county has them out for a review to see if they want to keep them next year. So normally we pay this at the beginning of the fiscal year in a one lump sum payment. But because they are out for bid this year, Deer Oaks is billing the county and us monthly. So this year it's monthly, but generally it is an annual payment once it's not out for bid.
Okay.
Can I ask follow just Judith's question about, are these in-person or virtual services? Do you happen to know?
Both. They
We get newsletters every month, and people can read those, but then they also can visit online, and they can also make telephone calls or connect with an advisor. So it's a pretty good service, but I would say it's underutilized.
Yeah.
We've also used them before when we had an issue or an event that caused trauma. We've contacted them, and they can and will send out an actual counselor to our staff to have a meetings in person.
That is a crucial resource, and I'm really glad to hear the staff is utilizing them. And I think the more we can do to normalize and encourage the use of these services, the better.
Yeah, we also, our life insurance also has that option for our full-time staff who are all a part of the life insurance. There is also a grief counseling or there's a counseling and financial counseling with them also. So there are several options our staff have.
Any further discussion about the EALs? All right, so all in favor of approving the motion on the table to approve the EALs as written, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed or abstained? The motion carries. Also, I would like to interject here, just as a matter of scheduling for today. So we do have the opportunity to go check out the mobile library. It's parked out back, which is so exciting. I feel like the kids in line to meet Santa Claus finally. And so we could do that sort of after we finish this agenda and before we go into closed session, or we could do the mobile library after a closed session ends. So I wanted to kind of put that on the table as a couple of options we have in terms of if folks have preferences, and or we can just kind of see how this goes. But the mobile library needs about 15 minutes to get going before we can go check it out.
I'd do it after the closed session ends.
Okay. Does that sound good to everybody?
I would too, because I've already seen it.
Ah,
I got a private tour the other day.
there you lucky you.
So
Okay.
I don't need to be in there again.
Okay. So let's plan on the mobile library tour after closed session. Great. Thank you. On with the agenda, moving on to the treasurer's report.
So I did submit one, but I don't see it in the packet. But I will say that thanks to the stock market, all of our accounts have increased in value. Do you have it in your packet?
I do not.
Okay.
Treasurer's report?
I forwarded it to you too. Okay. All right. Well, we can, when we take a break, we will go ahead and bring that back to you.
Thank you. Okay.
Yeah,
We'll revisit it then.
Pretty sure we saw that. So yeah.
Tressa, thanks for that tantalizing preview. Things are looking good.
Things are looking up.
All right. Moving on to the Smyrla report. John, over to you.
Yes, we met on December 12th. The notes I have from the meeting are that we're moving forward with the signing of the delivery contract after the new year. So that should be soon. This is the deliveries among the three the county library systems. And we revised the employee handbook to bring it into line with federal and state law and best practices for HR. The format allows us to easily update it every year. Two additions were the telework policy and the parental and family leave policy. We approved a remote work agreement. The person who handles the communications, Mark Volland, developed a new logo with a modern, clean look, and he did a good job with it. We approved an equity, diversity, and inclusion plan. Suzanne Darby will be returning to the board this month as after her term expires, she'll be the community member for the board. And at the February meeting, which will be February 20th, we'll be revising the bylaws to bring them into compliance with the new state law regarding membership of regional boards. And as you saw, I emailed out the current bylaws, which date from 2019.
Thank you, John. Y'all are getting a lot done over there. That's fantastic.
One addition to that, the directors have a monthly meeting with the Smyrna staff, and they announced to us that on April 9th, there's going to be a regional board retreat to which you will be invited. And it's going to just be best practices for boards, team building, meeting each other. And so I'll be following up with that when I get more details, but I thought you might want to put that on your calendar in case you'd like to attend. And I believe it's going to be a morning session, but I will get you more information on that. And attendance is not mandatory, of course, but if you'd like to participate in that, we will let you know.
Can I ask, I mean, that sounds fantastic. How would that align with the open meetings laws?
You would not be addressing library board policies and making library board decisions. So you could have a team building kind of exercise or just a general discussion of boards without having to call it a meeting, actually, as long as you're not discussing library business.
Okay. I think this event could be great for our development as a group and individually, but I do want to make sure we're very careful about making sure we're in compliance. All right, Michael, celebrations.
All right, thank you. We've got 2 this month, and it's for the same thing. It's for Allison Guy and Jake Parsons. And each year we have an author fair, and this year it was held up at the Charlotte Hall Library. And so authors are able to bring their books, sell their books, make brief presentations, sit at a table, and the public can come in, walk around, visit with each one of them. So it's a really enjoyable event, and our authors love it. And so Allison and Jake were particularly vital in the organization of it. So we thank you for your contributions to a successful author fair. Your excellent planning and coordination of this important event allowed local authors to be able to meet, share about their projects, and learn important skills with a professional workshop. Well done. So thank you both.
Kudos.
And we can go back to the Vanguard report from Tressa at this point, because here's that report.
All right, Tressa, we come back to you with the treasurer's report.
Sure. So as you can see, all of our accounts have increased in value thanks to the stock market. Our current account value of the original is 66,284 and change. And our Rudolph is 14,356 and change. Both increased. The original increased over $4,000, and the Rudolph increased a little over $900 in the 3-month period. And our Schwab account has also seen an increase of $133,913 over the 3-month period.
Thank you, Tressa. Any comments or questions? Tressa, please keep things moving in this direction. Thank you.
I'm on that stock market.
All right, Michael, your director's report.
Yes, we'll begin with the mobile library update. Unfortunately, this past Tuesday, when we were supposed to have the ribbon cutting, we did have inclement weather, and the county thought it inappropriate to tell people to stay off the roads and then come out and have a mobile library ribbon cutting. So we have rescheduled that for January 30th at 1 p.m. right here again at Leonardtown Library, and we will hope for the best for the weather. It is loaded at this point. We have had drivers training, and thanks to the College of Southern Maryland for providing some very good training, including 6 staff driving school buses, which is more challenging than you might think. And the last sort of piece of it is we're getting the Wi-Fi network put together. It has internet connectivity, but we're just making sure that when people come out to visit the mobile library at a stop, if they want to be able to connect to Wi-Fi, that will be possible. And kudos to our staff for very quickly getting that vehicle serviceable. It was an all hands on deck effort. Lots of folks contributed to getting getting all the books on it. On a more personal note, I went to pick it up, and where it was being built was in Stevensville, which is just the other side of the Annapolis Bay Bridge. So the first thing I did was come across the Bay Bridge in a 20-mile-per-hour wind. And I thought, oh, great. The first thing that's going to happen to the mobile library is I'm going to crash it. Nope, made it very safely. And it's actually more frightening to go over the Johnson Bridge in a large vehicle, it turns out, because it's very high up, and even if you stopped and stood out, you'd be standing on top of the guardrail. So you're way high up on that very narrow bridge. It is kind of a tense moment if you're not really experienced driving large vehicles, but it is here and it is undamaged. So
well done, Michael. Good for you.
Let's please move into the review of the fiscal year 24 budget with half of the year gone, because this is as of the end of December. And I will point out just a couple of quick things, but more than anything else, I kind of want to just ask if you have questions about it. And let me find my copy of it. Where have you gone? Well, I had it here somewhere. Sorry. There it is. Okay, so with 50% of the year gone, we are underspending just a little bit. And obviously, while we want to make sure we're spending all of our budget, it's good that in no particular area are we kind of vastly overspent, other than areas where they're front loaded. We have a lot of contracts up front. If you look on page 2, I do think that something's a little bit deceiving there. And then that's if you look at the utilities for Leonardtown especially, those are going to be much higher. It's simply that we get the invoice through the county and it is often not delivered in a particularly timely fashion. So we can be many months behind in payments there. But we anticipate once the full year of invoices is happening, that we'll probably be having to transfer money into utilities for the system. They have gotten more expensive this year. And I think the other thing that's interesting and worthy of note is all the way over on page 6. And that is some good news. If you look at the interest from the MLGIP account, it's at $18,009, and we were not anticipating getting much more than 10. So it's good to see that that account is getting some nice interest. And while the amounts aren't particularly large, we're a little bit ahead in our services and our fines. Again, we were not anticipating getting much in the way of that. If the full year is the same as the 6-month point, we'll be making about $29,000 in fines for the years. That's not insubstantial, but I would like us to consider asking or just telling the county that we're going to go fine free come July. As we'll have to look at the upcoming budget cycle, but if we get a decent amount, I think it would be a good idea finally at long last, like most of our surrounding libraries, not to charge fines on any materials. By state law, it's already not possible to charge to anybody who's under 18. So, we're not really looking at a whole lot of money coming in there. And as circulation goes more and more digital, there's no fines on that anyway. So what we've discovered through studies is that if you take away the fines, people still bring the materials back. And in some ways, it's a way to encourage it, because if people end up getting fines, they often feel either embarrassed or maybe economically stressed, and they don't bring the materials back, and you lose them as library customers. So I think it's finally time for us to do that, and if necessary, find other sources to make sure that we're balancing our budget. But other than that, I'd just like to ask if you have any questions about any of the lines here.
Just to be clear on that, you're recommending removing the fines but not replacement fees. True?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah. Replacement fees for damaged books or lost materials we'd still keep. And again, for people under 18, that's still in place. But
Michael, could you please prepare some data for us to help us get a better sense of the impact that the current collection of fines is having overall, and sort of what the removal of that would look like?
sure.
It would be helpful to know too, in good times and bad times, what would that removing that variable look like?
And there's been many studies done of this. And
Yeah.
we also have data from libraries in Maryland that have, for example, Calvert Charles no longer charge fines.
Mm-hmm.
So we're the only library in Southern Maryland. And it was basically that in the past, we've scrimped for every dollar. And I think maybe we're getting to the point where we can think about joining our partners in that. So we know from those libraries that their return rate has not gone down. So there might be further savings in how we contact people when there's overdues as well. So we'll just have to see. We'll get that together for you, and you won't have to make a decision anytime really soon on that.
Thank you.
Michael,
Any questions about any of the other lines? Yeah, yes, John.
Yes, on page 3, although it's a small amount for digital collection contracts, it is already over budget. Is that a long-term trend that we're experiencing with those contracts?
No, that's kind of an invoice that was larger than we were expecting, and we do not anticipate that line going further under. But it's not a whole lot of money, so with any luck, we will not see an increase there.
All right, thank you.
Other questions on any of the budget lines? Okay, well then, moving along.
Judith, are you good on the budget? Okay.
We've finished the second quarter of the fiscal year, so we can go ahead and take a look at some quarterly statistics. And overall circulation, including digital, is up 1%. And digital is basically able to make up for some of the declines that we see in print circulation. Not particularly surprised to see that. I think once the mobile library is on the road, we'll get back up again. But it's a trend that circulation does go up and down. Print circulation went considerably down during the COVID times, obviously. It began to come back up. And this year, I think we're kind of on pace with last year in terms of, accessibility during COVID. So I'm not surprised to see print down a little bit. Look, however, at our events. We are seeing an increase over last year in that, and note to the outreach events when we are basically more than doubling. Our outreach team is really starting to get out there now. Meeting room use up, visitors right on par. So over on the other second page, computer use generally tending down. We think that's in part because people have their own devices in many cases. Still an important presence for us, but not something that we see quite as much. And small increases in social media and large increases in visits to our website, which is always good to see. So Wi-Fi use in branch also up. Any questions about these statistics?
I have one question. It's probably just my own confusion. Under events, it has outreach. It's a significant increase. What is outreach events?
Outreach is when we go outside the library walls and present a program. So
Okay.
we have story times, for example, at Solderly or Greenwell.
Oh, okay. All right,
We
I
have
got it.
story times at the museums. We have story times at the Patuxent Naval Air
Okay.
Museum.
All right, I got it. Thank you.
So we'll go to Juneteenth. So just anything where we go and we do an actual library program.
It was my own density.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So, follow up to that. So how will you count the mobile library events? Will they be counted under outreach or will they have their own line?
Currently, they are, that significant increase is the mobile library
That is
staff.
outreach, and they will be counted under outreach, yes. And we call them, for example, Sandy's position is outreach coordinator. So that's where they'll be counted.
Helpful to have it broken out, mobile library events under outreach. I think we would like to see that.
So outreach is specifically things, it's a little bit complicated. So if it's a library program where people are coming because the library is there, so like a story time or something, that's actually counted under programs. Outreach is things like when we're attending somebody else's thing. So like the fair would be outreach, or going to the soup kitchen is outreach, or going to where like the library is participating in something. And so mobile will actually have a little bit of a split. Most, like 90% of it is going to be an outreach because they will be visiting places in the community. And they will be taking the lion's share of our outreach. So we still will have staff going to do some other things, like the fair, for example, will still be library staff doing that, but the mobile library probably will not be at the fair. So that would be clumped in there, but the programs that the mobile library does will still be counted as programs. And that is kind of regulated by the state. So we're following the state guidelines on how to count things where. We can tell you, we can track it for you separately, but the reason it's split up like that is because we give statistics to the state and that's how they define it. So a library program versus outreach, but there is a lot of crossover and gray area there. So I can see why there's confusion, but essentially if it's like our program that people are specifically coming to see us, that is counted as a program, regardless of where it is. And then outreach is when we're at somebody else's program, but we have a presence there and people are coming to see us there. Yeah.
And just to summarize, yes, we will give you statistics on the mobile library use.
Yeah. Michael, when you look at all these different metrics and we have things moving a little up, moving a little down, what is the most concerning to you when you look at this and see what these trends look like?
I'd say the most concerning thing right now is I would like to see circulation of physical materials hold steady. And I think that just to give a taste of something to come up, our next year's budget, we are looking at increasing materials. Our materials budget for print is less than it was in 2018. And it's because of other demands. And I think that having more money there, especially put towards very popular materials and bestsellers, is going to help that stay up there. I'd like to see that number remain steady, But we know that as more and more the trend towards digital happens, it's a challenge. And this is happening to libraries all over the country, really. But I'd like to see that number stay there, especially since not everybody in Southern Maryland is on the right side of the digital divide. So I think it's very important to continue providing that. We are starting to see some statistics from our consultant on the strategic planning, and we're having training next week on looking at a database they have of our materials. It's looking really good. They're surprised at how effective our collection is, especially in children's area. But I think that we can effectively boost that up with more of the things that people like to read. Materials costs there have gone up about 8 to 10% in the last 2 years. And so if we have kind of less money and materials even more expensive, I'd like to, like to see a growth there, and also a growth in our digital spending. I'd say that's the only real concern I have. Other than that, I think it's looking really good. I'd like us to continue to be heavily used. I shared with you a November sort of snapshot of what our customers think about us.
Right.
And that's just glowing. So I think people love the library and we remain heavily used, but I don't want to see any sorts of decline here.
Thank you.
The county is going to extend its contract to SB, that's the auditors, for 3 years. And there was some concern by one of our trustees that there was not enough time to review the audit before approval last time. We do have deadlines. The county would like it by November 1st. The state would like it by November 1st. But in the past, it has been the case that we have been later than that. So I think the solution to that will simply be to make sure that you have several weeks with the audit in hand to review it and see if you have any concerns about it. We don't really want to change auditors. We don't have to go in with the county, but there's 2 advantages for doing so. And the first is that changing auditors is a laborious process. When we changed from the previous auditors to SB, really, I'd say it's only been, and Belinda will back us up on this, it's only been since this year that they kind of were able to look back and see some issues that were longstanding with the previous audit, and they really kind of learned what we're all about. So I'd hate to switch again and have to teach somebody else the library's business. The other issue is cost. The cost is going up slightly. It's going up about $500. It'd be slightly over 11,000. I don't think we can get another audit done for under 20 or 25,000 if we hired somebody on our own. Just looking at what we're doing with strategic planning, for example. So it's a cost savings for us to be in with the county. So I would recommend that we continue on with SB and simply make sure that you've got time, even if we are a couple of weeks late on any deadline, to see that audit next year. The budget submission is in your packet. This is due to the county today. But it is exactly in terms of the numbers, what you approved in December. This is just kind of the document that we use to present it. And you'll see many, many, many different Excel forms in it. This is the way the county likes the budget presented to them. It is exactly the same way that all the other departments in the county present. We are asking for a substantial increase in funding, and I've kind of broken out for you on pages 4 and 5 the highlights. Sorry, we seem to have had a fumble on the handoff there to Lexington Park. I will make sure that doesn't happen again. We are asking for money to bring our employees up to parity, more up to parity from a lesser amount that they received from 2017 through 2022. So there's money for a 5% COLA and some step increases. We are asking for 5 additional full-time equivalents. One will be for the mobile library. Currently, we have 2, and they're doing a great job, but what if one of them wants a vacation or has to be out for some reason? We don't want the mobile library on the road with just one person. For one thing, simply backing it up, although it's got 4 cameras on it, is something that we were trained. We don't want to have, if you can have somebody behind it, make sure you do. And there's just sort of security concerns there. So this would give us a person who would fill in. And then when that person wasn't needed on the mobile library, we could do other outreach using the small library minivan. So we're asking for that. We want 1 FTE at each of the 3 physical locations. The other one is for a computer assistant, an IT assistant. We feel that our IT coordinator is overstretched and we're concerned about employee burnout. He's the only one who would have to be here 24/7 when something goes wrong. And unfortunately, when things go wrong, we often have to fix them overnight or over weekends. So this would be a person who would do substantially more to help keep the network robust, to do troubleshooting, and to give our IT coordinator a little bit less pressure on the job. And it could be that that would be a person who ultimately would step in should our IT coordinator decide to retire. So those are things that we're asking for. We're looking at increases in health insurance for next year and budgeting for those. You see that we are asking for additional 25,000 in print and 63,000 for ebooks and digital audiobooks. Especially Hoopla costs continue to go up, and we have to restrict access in order to not have that kind of blow a big hole in our budget. Utilities we are expecting to go up. One of the major things that we're looking at is furniture and equipment. For the last 8 years, those budget lines have not increased. Library furniture is very expensive. Now, we're not having such a problem at Leonardtown because it's mostly all new. But at our other 2 locations, we're looking at some pretty tired things. Also, our IT network is in need of, we put what money we can into it, but we have had some outages, looking at some new servers, some new Wi-Fi, new cameras. And we're not thinking of this as a one-time capital thing. We did ask for grants to upgrade the AV systems at Charlotte Hall and at Lexington Park. Charlotte Hall doesn't even have a mounted projector, for example. We know at least one county commissioner came to Lexington Park to have a sort of an event, and the AV system didn't work for him, which was a little embarrassing. They're not intuitive at all, and so we are looking to see that kind of an upgrade. But we're not looking at this as a kind of one-time thing. We're thinking that this is money over at least 3 or 4 years that would take to put furnishings in, new stacks in some instances. I know we've got a capital grant coming in fiscal year 28. My concerns about that are, let's say we get an additional 2 million from the state and it's $5 million. If you do the HVA systems at Charlotte Hall and at Lexington Park, and they're both badly overdue, you're probably going to spend most of that money. We wouldn't be able to do some of these upgrades to enhance our customer experience. Charlotte Hall especially is in need of a complete refresh. New stacks, new furnishings, a redo of the meeting room, new meeting room furniture. So we think that we've not been, I mean, we've limped along, but that this is necessary and it's not like a one-time capital thing. This is going to be an ongoing expense for several years. So that is our budget increase. We're asking for an additional $1,059,410.
Michael,
yeah.
aren't those the numbers that we approved
Yes.
last month?
Yes.
Okay.
This is just how we're breaking out the budget for you. Yeah, these are the numbers, and I don't say you need to approve it this year. This is, I think this is
Just
as
to be clear.
you wrote it up. We've gotten kind of, I'll call it iffy news right now from the state that libraries at the state level may be flat funded for this upcoming year. We don't know that that's the case, but the Maryland State Library has suggested that might be something that we're looking at. So that county funding becomes all the more important for us. So we're looking at a tough budget year. We know that there's not a lot of money, but we are encouraged by the commissioners to ask for what we need. And we think this is what we need. The schools are asking for 14 million additional. So we know there's going to be a lot of competition. We are working with customers to help support the library's request.
Michael,
Please keep us posted.
Michael, on page 2, where you're talking about the 5 additional FTEs, there's a percentage amount at the end of that paragraph that appears to be a typo. It's the sentence that has the total cost of the additions, the amount per position.
How far down?
It's the bullet that starts with, we are asking for 5 additional FTEs, and then it's the last sentence that says total cost of these additions.
Okay.
Page 4, I'm sorry.
Oh, thank you. Oh, thank you.
Yeah, there's one on page 2.
That should be a dollar sign, not a percentage. Thank you. And I can fix that.
All right. There's also a typo on page 20, the word scheduling.
I spell check this thing. On page what?
20.
20. Would it be possible to raise John's volume in this room? Like just raising the TV volume?
Thank you.
Thank you.
I can fix that. Spell check after spell check. I didn't know why they're not picking up.
I do like seeing all the justifications for the money. I think that makes the case very clear.
Well, just a reminder that at this point, when the county is giving us funding, they don't break it down and say, here's what you have to spend. They said, here's your increase, but they do request justification for any amount of increase. So we try to spell it out as clearly as we can. Mm-hmm.
So page 4, in the middle, we say county funding in bold. And it's the 4.8 million, an increase of 1,059,410.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so if you jump over to page 5, the last sentence, total increase in budget, all sources, and we had the exact same number. I'm curious because I thought we said we might get 10,000 from state or somewhere else. Is it really the same number increase? Wouldn't you put in the extra money you're getting from
the grants,
the state?
Yeah.
I mean, I know grants are iffy. You may not.
Mm.
I don't know if we put grant money in because it's not guaranteed.
Right.
So,
Is it really the same number?
Well, it looks like it's up in the state funding bullet on that same page.
We'll take a look at that. Actually,
Yeah.
on page,
we don't have the state funding number when we submit the budget, so we just put in a number that's a
And
guess.
It's possible we will be flat funded, but if we look at,
Right, but right above it, it said kind of, we're expecting another 10,000.
yeah, if you look at page
I don't write that
7,
part.
we should be able to see that number.
Mhm.
Yeah, I see that number
Mhm.
under requested increase. Budget all sources and budget county. So, okay, so the budget all sources is a different number.
Yeah, okay, thank you for your short.
I think that was just an oversight there.
County only and all sources. So.
So I think what you mean, is that what you mean, the bottom
On
page
the
5, it should be the
6-2.
all sources number.
Yeah. Yeah, that's 104. That's the county number. So I would need to get a different number for all sources. And those look like it could be 1062910.
That's what it looks like.
And
Okay,
just
thank you.
so you know, the way the county makes us complete these forms is very complicated.
I'm sure.
And it groups things that we wouldn't normally group. So like I believe I do the spreadsheet parts, he does all the writing parts, but I don't have mine in front of me, but we break out what we want from the county specifically, but it groups like our fines and our services and any other income we get plus the state into one number. So you don't actually get to see the state number separate. And then we're guessing at the state number. So then when we get our budget, it's actually not even correct because the state number is different.
But that all sources is 1062910. So it's about 3,000 more, and I'll fix that. Thank you.
Okay. So this goes to the county today,
Yes.
and then when is your first presentation, your in-person?
It's March, and I've given you that date previously, but I'm not going to remember. It's like March 2020 or something like that. I'll get you the exact date, but I always send that out well ahead of time, and you are welcome to attend that budget work session. It's in the afternoon, and it's the same time that like the health department and the Department of Social Services are considered. So we are asked to go present the budget, and sometimes they ask me up and ask specific questions, and sometimes they don't. I like it when they do, just so I can talk to them about it. But it'll not be till March when that happens. Moving on to action items, do you wish to take a break or shall we plow on?
We're good. Let's keep going.
The first thing I ask you to consider is summer intern. In the past, the board has paid for a summer intern, and it sounds like if our investments are doing well enough that you would not be at the point where you could no longer afford to do one. I know that you have to maintain a certain corpus in those investments. So I'm asking you to approve one. We typically do 3, and we ask the friends to pay for one. This past year, the library paid for one. So if you would please consider that.
How much are we talking?
About 3,000.
Yeah, it ranges between $2,000 and $3,000.
About $3,000 typically.
Summer only?
Summer only, yes.
10 weeks generally. 10 weeks at 21 hours a week, I believe. Is that right? 24 hours a week, sorry.
Yeah. So, and as we've told you before, typically those people have a very good experience, and we have hired, is it 3 of them now? Or only 2?
Emma, Elisa.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but we have
I think we have currently 3.
Yeah, we
think we
have
have
hired a
currently
number
3.
of them as full-time library employees at some point. So they get into the intern program, discover that they like libraries and like St. Mary's County Library. So I will ask you to please approve paying for one of those.
with funds coming from the board's money that the board is paying for the intern,
From
right?
the Vanguard account.
From the Vanguard account.
Okay. Second.
Just specify. Any discussion?
I just, the one of those Vanguard's accounts was created to fund an intern.
Was that the Rudolph? Okay,
That's
so
where
it's
the
coming
money
from
comes
the
from.
Rudolph. Okay. Just in terms of the mechanics, I guess, since does the library like put the money out front and then it's reimbursed by the Rudolph account? That's
Yes,
how it works?
correct. Yes.
All right. Any other discussion?
I create, once we've done the intern for an entire summer, then I calculate out their paychecks and then I send that invoice to Tressa and she writes us a check for the exact amount that was spent
Got
on
it.
the person.
Okay, got it. And welcome, John. Glad you're with us. Oh, I hope everything's okay. All right. Well, thank you for being here. All right. Without any additional discussion, I think we're ready for a vote. All those in favor of the motion to support a library intern through the board's Vanguard accounts, the Rudolph Fund specifically, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed or abstained?
I'll abstain, not having been here for the discussion.
Okay. Motion passes. Thank you.
All right. We have a decorations policy to consider. This is not part of the personnel manual. um, this is a part of the policies and procedures, so it's separate from that personnel manual. And I ask you to take a look at it and please consider approving it. I should note that our staff had some confusion when we were presenting this internally and they thought it applied to like their desks. And that is not the case. This is just out in public areas. And basically, we are just sort of setting up a policy for how decorations might be done in the library.
So I have one question.
Mhm.
The last part of the second paragraph where it says displayed in public areas and should be limited in employee areas. Should it say limited to employee areas? Or are we limiting what they can
No,
put in employee areas?
no, limited in. Go ahead if you'd like.
We just don't want people to go crazy. You know, we've seen certain area, you know, you've seen other offices who have like contests for,
Right.
and we don't want to go to that extreme, especially because a lot of our areas are visible to the staff or to the customer. I'm sorry. So, you know, just not in excess.
Okay, that makes sense. I just
And we also have many shared desks.
okay,
So
that makes sense.
It's problematic if one person really wants to do it up and it's a shared space.
And this really just puts in writing what we've been doing for the past few years. It came across on the HR listserv that I'm a part of, and somebody else asked if anybody had this policy, and I was like, we probably should have this in writing. So
Makes sense.
I do have a question though about the wording. I think taken by themselves, eggs, bunnies, reindeer, etc., are certainly secular items, but I'm guessing these would tend to appear around the holidays when you expect to have discussions about eggs and bunnies and reindeers and things like that.
Are you saying that the list should have more context or?
Well, I'm seeing kind of a conflict here. So each of these things taken by themselves is certainly a secular item. A rabbit's a secular item. But you do bunnies and eggs, and it happens to be approaching Easter.
Mm-hmm.
It seems to me you're kind of making a statement about it being essentially a Christian event. You're drawing attention to it.
Mm-hmm.
No more so than say March, which is Shamrock time. I mean, I think that it's okay for us to have some recognition of holidays, but I don't think that this is specifically establishing those as something religious, and a person who is not religious could say, okay, this is just a spring thing.
I mean, it is St. Patrick's Day.
Yeah,
Not a religious holiday.
It is also Saint Valentine's Day, although the saint's been dropped. So, I mean, I'm not sure how I feel about it. I mean, a Christmas tree is a Christmas tree. It's for a purpose. It has a lot of religious meaning to it. It also has a lot of secular meaning to it. I don't find it offensive. I've worked in lots of workplaces where people decorate. I mean, I don't know where to go with it. You could go down a rabbit hole. The candy cane, in fact, has religious symbolism to it. I don't know how far do you take it?
Well,
I don't know.
We're simply trying to
example.
establish a space that,
Yeah.
all right, so I will tell you that there's some expectation on the part of the public that the library be decorated for these times. And some years ago, an organization set up a Christmas tree in the library lobby. And that was actually fairly burdensome for us. But there is that expectation that people want to see this kind of thing. So I don't think we want to completely eliminate seasonal things, even if they have some religious connotation. The alternative is either doing absolutely nothing at all for that, or having to do everything for that. So instead of a Christmas, you have to have, and at the previous library is that we did this. There was a menorah, there was a Kwanzaa candle, there was a Yule log. So I think that this policy walks the line between customer expectations and keeping things manageable for the library and making them, I'd say, fairly comfortable for most people.
Yeah, Michael.
Symbols or decorations with religious, political, or
Hold on.
partisan
Can we let
content.
John jump in here?
Yeah.
Go ahead, John.
Yeah, no, I think overall it's a good approach. Is this typical of other government agencies? That would be my sense, but I don't know that.
Well, I'm asking for approval of policy, please.
Well, is there an answer to John's question?
I'm sorry, what's the question?
I was going to
It's
follow up
typical
on
of
this comment.
other government policies.
So the difference I think is that we serve the public, and we serve everyone. Whereas a lot of government offices aren't necessarily open to the public. But I don't know for sure, John. This is becoming more the thing in libraries. There are still libraries that put up everything. But we could take out that line about the secular decorations if that helps.
I mean, I honestly think that you could delete the first two sentences in the second paragraph. So in the first paragraph ends, decorations should be respectful and sensitive to employees and the public. Then the final sentence of the second paragraph, symbols or decorations with religious, political, or partisan content may not be displayed in public areas. I think we do start to slip down the rabbit hole with the first part of the second paragraph. My 2 cents. John, did you want to jump into?
Let me make sure I understand. Symbols or decorations, are you proposing to take that sentence out?
That's the only sentence I would keep in that paragraph.
Well, now I'll follow what Judith led off with religious, political, or partisan social context. So you've got a Christmas tree. I mean, that's how we know it. It's a Christmas tree.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, it does have religious connotations, cultural connotations going back to Germany and all kinds of other things. But how would you feel about it if, let's say, you were a Muslim?
Right.
I don't know, but I see menorahs and they don't bother me. I mean, I see the Star of David, it doesn't bother me. That's my personal opinion is this is tricky. I totally understand what you're saying, but if you said no religious, that would mean there would be no Christmas tree anywhere. And
Which we do not.
also in Easter, the egg is very symbolic. So you could almost start eliminating more than you would even allow. So I don't know where you would in the workplace, and I haven't been in the workplace in a few years. Basically, everything was allowed, unless except for the political and partisan statements. Offensive materials were not allowed. So it was not restricted as you can't have religious things. It was just you can't have political or offensive statements.
So thinking through what John's saying, and I was also recently looking at the calendar of holidays that the St. Mary's County Public Schools proposes, and they don't propose holidays for things like the first day of Ramadan or Hanukkah. And those are days that they could take as holidays, as like staff days or things like that I proposed back. Because if we're looking to be inclusive, we want to make sure everyone who walks in doesn't feel like, oh, this isn't a place for me because it's representing things that other people celebrate and I don't. Or vice versa, the other side of it, there will be a time for the thing that I celebrate that they will recognize then. But I think that the holidays that are not celebrated by people of specific religions should either be avoided or be inclusive of other holidays as well. I feel like from a library perspective, recognizing other holidays that are not celebrated by the majority can be an educational moment. And you can put out very generic decorations for a lot of those holidays. Just have talk about candles and here's Diwali and the colors and things like that then becomes an educational moment for people who are entering who may not know that holiday exists.
We do that, but we would prefer to have the books be the message in a display and not actual items.
I think that's fantastic. Then I would recommend doing that for other holidays as well.
We're talking about other holidays. I'm talking about Ramadan or Hanukkah.
But candy canes and reindeer are part of a holiday.
These are decorations. These are not the holidays. These are not the books that we would put out. These are the decorations.
Right. And that's what I'm saying. Yeah. The decorations should either follow all the holidays so that no one walks in and feels like they don't represent my holiday, but they're representing someone else's holiday.
So we don't currently put any Christmas decorations up. We put up winter decorations and put out books that are on the different holidays, because if we are decorating for all of the different, if we put out a menorah, there's always the chance that you're missing someone.
And someone's going to get upset.
We would just rather not do that.
Yeah.
Now staff can do it on their personal desk, within, and we made sure to put this reasonable standards. So I think Michael's suggestion of just having that last line of the second paragraph really does say what we are currently doing. We don't have Christmas trees. We do get complaints about it because this area is primarily Christian. So we're just trying to put into writing what we are currently doing and be respectful and sensitive to the public.
So this decoration policy is about personal spaces.
No, it's not.
No,
it's not. It's only about the public areas of the library.
It's about both. It's about both because we say we want the staff areas to be limited and not excessive.
Right. Yeah, but it doesn't prohibit somebody from wearing a Star of David, for example. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. Fair.
Or having it on their desk.
My confusion is coming from, I thought this second paragraph talking about eggs and bunnies and candy canes and reindeer was talking about how staff plan to decorate the library overarchingly, but then you just said that's not how we do it. So yeah. I think the wording in that is confusing.
Yeah, that's why I suggested removing that.
So may I ask you to consider approval of it with Michael's suggestion that only the last sentence of the second paragraph extends.
All right, so let me throw that out as a motion, then we can hash it out. So I would move that we accept the declarations policy as written with the amendment of deleting the first two sentences in the second paragraph, so that the second paragraph would only consist of that symbols or decorations sentence.
Second.
I'd second that.
Okay, discussion.
It doesn't really set well with me. I wouldn't have a problem if you say we don't do Christmas trees or any religious, but it is part of our culture, as well as Judaism or Islam. They are part of our culture. So to say we're not going to have anything, what if you wanted to do a special display or a special month on Yom Kippur or something? Would we be not allowed to put out any symbolism for that? I mean, just striking out anything religious.
I take your point. I take your point, Judith. I think that in the first sentence, when it talks about we may install appropriate seasonal decorations, I think a lot of the decorations we're talking about are so powerful in our culture that yes, there is like a religious core origin, significant part, but there's also a broad. And so I do think that the language in that first sentence allows for judgment and common sense about, the kind of decorations. And it's not like anything that has any contact with religion is prohibited.
Well, I mean, that's not what I heard. I heard we just do winter decorations. So we don't put out Christmas trees. We don't put out a Santa. It just seems we're forbidding ourselves from doing something that we may want to do. And maybe we want to rotate through the years, recognizing different religious and cultural times, seasons, events.
Well, I think you were on to a good idea, and that is that if we did a Christmassy type thing, why not at the appropriate time of the year dedicate some time to, Passover or Hanukkah?
We don't want to do that, actually.
You can't have it halfway.
We're not having it halfway, and this is only about decorations. We could still have a display of books on Ramadan or something. It's just that we don't want the decorations up there.
Well, I think the first sentence really covers it. May install appropriate seasonal and other decorations. I think that covers
Yeah. So I think that these questions are some of the most difficult questions we face in a pluralistic society. So we're not going to have a neat conclusion. I would ask, can we vote on this motion and see where we stand? Dorothy, do you have a thought?
Yes.
Doing what we do, yeah.
That seems wrong.
Also like to suggestion on this. Can we still have, as a government-funded agency, the library is nonpartisan and inclusive, out of respect for all of our community members and colleagues? And then we go down to the last sentence in that paragraph.
I like that.
That would have to amend the motion or table that motion and have a new one.
Well, do we have a lot of complaints that make management feel like we need a policy?
Yes. It's mostly people complaining that they want something specifically Christian at Christmas time.
And so our response is we're not going to do that.
Yes. Because we're concerned that we're then going to get complaints about the opposite thing. My tax dollars are supporting this library. Why are you giving a specifically religious?
Yeah, it's not the library's job to pick sides among religions.
In fact, it's just the opposite. So
can I get some guidance on how to address Dorothy's suggested edit in the context of this motion that's already on the table?
You could, you made the motion, you could amend your motion to say, I will amend my motion to be what Dorothy has said. As a government-funded agency, the library is nonpartisan and inclusive out of respect for our community members and colleagues, comma, Symbols and decorations, religious, political, or partisan social content may not be displayed in public areas and should be limited in employee areas.
Okay, so I would like to amend my motion along the lines that Michael just said.
Second.
Okay.
And then you can call it.
Any
for a
more
vote.
discussion? All right, all those in favor of this convoluted motion, please say aye.
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 Any opposed or abstained? All right, the motion carries.
Thank you. The next one should be pretty easy. It is a meeting room policy. All we've really done is add the computer lab to it. So we have the computer lab here in the Leonardtown Library. It is just outside of where you start going into where the senior center is, or just outside from the inside of where the Maryland/Mary Lee Russell room is. And so all we've really done for the most part is just added that. We've also clarified a little bit about sales in a paragraph 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, paragraph 5. Other than that, I don't think there's a whole lot of changes here, but you can see changes in blue.
I would recommend on page 3, and we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Look under the 6th bullet point, the 3rd sub bullet should carry this statement. I would recommend that that be a must.
All publicity.
So instead of, I can do that. It says should carry this statement. The library and library board of trustees do not promote or endorse the views of program sponsors, program content, or presenters. And John wishes it to say must. Must, yes. Must.
Should.
So, just as a note for why that says should, we were worried about policing that. When we catch it, we ask them to add it, but a lot of times we don't necessarily see the publicity materials. So I don't mind changing it. I'm just letting you know that's why that's there, is we didn't feel like we could police that as well as.
Oh, no, I don't think,
to.
I don't think the question is whether or not it should be there. It's just a sort of, we're compelling it. And if we don't see it, we can ask you to redo your statement. Good with that.
So I think we can approve these revisions to the meeting room policy as written with the amendment of replacing the word should with must.
So moved.
Any discussion?
Michael, the one part I was confused about is I'd understood that the room next to the information desk at Lexington Park was also a computer lab. Is that not the case?
John, did you hear Mary Ann's answer?
No, we can't hear him.
No, I didn't hear the answer.
I don't know.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. I thought I had it on. Sorry. The computer lab at Lexington Park is used so heavily by the public right now that allowing for reservations there would be very complicated. Like they use it with the teens, they use it as open space for customers to come in and use when their other computers are being used. So right now we're just limiting it to the Leonardtown computer lab.
All right. Yeah, I see how heavily the one is used in Lexington Park.
Is this document in parallel with whatever we say about study rooms, or is it the same, or could it be retitled meeting in study room policy?
Study rooms are a separate policy.
Or it does not mirror this one then?
I mean, it's very similar, but there are different rules for the study rooms.
Okay, thank you.
All right, with no further discussion, all those in favor of approving the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed or abstained? All right, the motion passes.
Before we get into the next item for approval, note in your packet a meeting schedule. And we've had to change one of the meetings that's in July. It was scheduled to be at Lexington Park, and we're going to have it at Leonardtown. And the reason is because at Lexington Park then on Fridays, we are doing the Lunch and Learn series with the kids. So Amy Ford wanted the meeting room for working with children and their families at that time. So we'll just move it here. And that will be the schedule for this year. Before we began the meeting, there was some discussion of simply having all the meetings at Leonardtown. You don't have to talk about that now. We can leave that discussion until next year because we've got the meeting rooms booked here. If we wanted to have them all at Leonardtown, we have to make sure that they were all booked ahead of time. So we will ask you to consider that next year.
I do have a question. So I was putting these in my calendar and also on my phone, and I got down to October and November. And if I'm reading my phone right, that's the third Wednesday where everything else was second. Is that the plan?
We have holiday conflicts for those months.
Okay, so that is okay.
Yeah, we had to move them up.
And before you move on, I just want to state Amy Ford sent a message just to go back to the interns. We currently actually have 6 employees that were interns at one point.
That's a great pipeline.
Seems like a good way to get people interested in working for the library. The last item for your public approval that I have for you are director's goals. And I have listed several for you here. But obviously, if you wish to amend or add to those, wide open to it. Oversee the budget process in the library appeal, seeking for an increase in county funding. Oversee the creation of a mobile library schedule and advise on the mobile library's deployment. Working with the consultants, trustees, and staff, develop the strategic plan. Working with the HR and finance coordinator, explore the feasibility of finding a replacement for the paycheck payroll HR system. So currently we do use paychecks. We have had some concerns about them and they are not inexpensive. So we just want to look at this. Typically when you start to tell somebody like paychecks, hey, we're going to go somewhere else, you might find you get a price break. So I'm not saying we're going to replace it, just so much as we'd like to look at options and consider the replacement of that. Can we get the same services or better services for less amounts of money? And Belinda's already begun some preliminary looks at other systems. Conduct and evaluate an organizational climate survey in the autumn. That's an employee satisfaction survey, basically.
That's the biennial one you do?
Yeah, and we haven't been, because of strategic planning, for example, we haven't necessarily done a public one this past time. So we're going to get back on doing those every other year. Facilitate meetings of and support the Friends of the St. Mary's County Library and St. Mary's County Library Foundation, coordinating those groups for the benefit of the library. That's almost a operational thing that I'm going to do no matter what, but I don't mind having it as a goal since this could be a year of change for both of those organizations. We will make sure that we're doing our best to have them survive and thrive and continue to support the library. Any questions and or additions or things you'd like to see?
I'm not sure that we're in a position to take this as an action item when we have not had the chance to meet in closed session about the performance appraisal. I know we are also talking about possible goals, and the things you've listed are obviously very important responsibilities. I think for the goals, I would like to see things that are more specific and more measurable with more kind of time-bound benchmarks beyond sort of the general responsibilities. I'm not sure how other folks feel, or if we should discuss this more now, or if we want to table this for after our closed session. What do folks think?
We got to be careful there. We
That's
can't,
right, because yes,
we
the
can't
closed session
come
is
back.
only about the assessment piece,
yeah,
the evaluation.
right.
Okay, okay,
So we can't come out of that and then do any other business.
correct.
But can't you say it's setting up the assessment for next year? This to me would be setting up the assessment for next year,
Mhm.
Yeah.
for January 1st and on. So I think it is an assessment piece.
Which would
I
be
mean, you
a
have to
closed
create your
session.
assessment at the beginning of the year, inform your
So that we
employee
can
what the
measure,
standards are,
yeah,
and then
Yeah, in your
so-
closed session, you could absolutely discuss anything related to the director's performance because that is what you're closing the meeting for.
that is true.
not just past, but then
Yeah,
expectations of the future, and that's which is only
basically
fair.
it's
Yeah.
anytime you're discussing individual performance is what this forum covers. So you could discuss anything related to the director's assessment and performance, including setting goals for this upcoming year. My request to you would be that I've seen a draft of some of the things you're talking about, and one of them says recruit and if I'm going to remember,
Yeah.
but recruit members to the foundation who will have expertise in accepting stocks. That's not a fair goal to set to me. I do not control the library foundation. Suppose they reject that and you come to me and say, you didn't fill this goal. And I can, well, what do you want me to do? Hold a gun to them? So that is not a fair goal to set to me. I think it's perfectly fine to say, support the Friends of the Library for the good of the library, or support the
Sure,
foundation.
but that's not
but I
really a
don't
goal.
control
That's
those
a
people.
responsibility. And I
Yeah.
think, and I will say, so the initial list of goals that I had drafted, I did share with Michael to give him a heads up of like what my thoughts were and sort of our starting point, knowing that we are going to work together and make
Yeah,
changes.
so I would like a chance to comment on those, and just in case.
It's fair. I think
yeah.
if we establish a set of goals
I mean,
and
it's
the director
usually-
looks at it and says, this one is for whatever, I have a problem with
Yes.
it, we certainly would take that under advisement. I don't think it's a set in stone the first time.
Yes.
I
So
think if
my
there's
hope
an
would be
issue,
to approve the goals at the February meeting.
Yeah.
Once you've had the chance to review
Yeah,
them.
absolutely.
We'll
Yeah.
make sure we're on the same page.
So today you would formulate those goals, and then we would have a discussion about them in February.
Correct.
And, it's not like I want to object to things you want me to do. It's just that I have to know that if something's outside my control, that it's not something I would be necessarily fair to evaluate me on.
Yeah. We want to set you up for success and the library up for success and continue the growth and the good work that's going on.
All right, well, in that case, we do not need approval of that for this time. So Michael, I'm going to turn it back to you for new trustee business. Before you go into closed session, I do have some updates on dates to remember.
Can
Okay.
I just ask a question quickly about the director's goals? Remind me again what our timeline is for looking at a new building for Charlotte Hall.
That will not be this year. Next year in 25, it will be something that we'll have to do, because we'll have to, although it's fiscal year 28, we'll have to be looking at a design for Charlotte Hall Library ahead of time, because you can't go into the grant writing session, which would be 26, without necessarily having architect's plan there, specific costs there. The stronger you make that application, the more you are likely to get money. So that would not be for 24, but for 25, we'd be wanting to start that process already.
Perfect. Thank you.
I do have one question, and it comes with sincere apologies for coming in late. I see that under Roman 7A4, the county is thinking about extending their contract with the auditors. SB.
They've gone beyond thinking they are.
They are.
They are, yes.
And are we tied in on that contract?
Yes, we are. And we had that discussion while you were gone, and I'm sorry that it happened in your absence. We understand that, this was unavoidable for you. My response to that is going to be to make sure that you have all the time you possibly need to evaluate that audit. If you have questions about it, we will submit those questions to the auditor before approval. Want to make sure that you're feeling confident about that process.
I want to feel confident about the auditors and not worried about the process.
The county is perfectly satisfied with them, and all the other members have been. So we will make sure that any questions that any of you have are addressed in the upcoming audit.
In terms of new business, I did want to ask, are there any updates on the security measures that we have been discussing? Any word from the county or any progress on those fronts?
And the answer to that question is we are going to, I think, have to evaluate costs ourselves for installing panic buttons. No, I'm not trying to criticize the county. Right now, they're trying to finish off the correction center and they are understaffed. So for example, the pad for the mobile library is not complete. The electrical plug is not complete. We have priorities that are not necessarily being addressed right now, but that's due to their workload. The mobile library pad should be ready within 3 weeks. So no, we do not have any specific feedback on that yet, and I don't think it's a priority for them. So we may have to consider that. We are installing additional cameras ourselves. So I would say that those have been the primary concerns that you said address immediately. So the cameras are being done. And I think we'll probably end up having to work on the panic buttons ourselves, but we'll work with the county on that as they are able. But again, it's not something that we can compel. And I mean, if you walk in the front of the library here, there's a cone out there. That's been a trip hazard for 3 years. They are wonderful to work with, but their capacity is sometimes limited.
So is there a timeline on the installation of the cameras?
We've just purchased more, should be done within 2 months.
I would really appreciate sort of ongoing updates on these issues. I think this does need to remain a priority on our list and on the library's list. And so it'd be helpful to know what's happening or, not happening as we try to make sure that this
I
is.
should point out that there's already a panic button in 2 of our locations that allow closing the door. At Charlotte Hall and Lexington Park. What we don't necessarily have there is the ability from the security station to do that. And so we don't have a panic button in any location that connects to like the sheriff's office or the state police office.
My thought is, and this became public knowledge, thanks to the County Times, that I think this is an important issue to bring up at a budget hearing. And I don't know where we are in the 25 budget with security, what the line item is for it at all. But I certainly think it's worth bringing up our concerns about it, the funding we are asking for it. And I mean, there were a lot of recommendations in there and they are expensive. But to show the county we have concerns about security, we first off need our staff to be secure and safe and the public. And then what are our priorities for addressing that audit? And how we need to fund it over the next 1, 2, 3 years or something. I think that's really key to the commissioners. They would probably want to hear that. And I think they would key in on that kind of thing also. So I don't know what the line item is for next year for security and what we budgeted in exactly. I haven't looked at, but that would be my recommendation is we make sure we include that in any budget presentation.
My concern about that would be that, I mean, I think I'm already pushing it a little bit by talking about furniture and equipment as an ongoing expense. I'm sure they would say that would be a one-time capital expense. So we'd be looking at capital funds for that. We could apply for them. We could ask for them. In addition to, I hope, the fiscal year 28 amounts. The capital improvement plan is already under discussion for this year, but we could ask for funding next year to address these things. I do think that they would regard that as a capital expense.
I'm not comfortable with a delay of that magnitude.
Yeah, I mean, there's always money at the end of the year. We've seen this happen. There's going to be money come June. If we put it out there that we have a need, we at least have put it out there that we have the need. And when the county comes to emptying the coffers at the end of the year, which they do, at least we're on the list. And we've notified the county that we have concerns about security. If they choose not to act on it, that's on them, right? Yeah, I think we should start checking off at least the low-hanging fruit and have a plan for the more expensive items. And not 3 years out. But if we act like we can wait 3 years, then security is not a priority for us. And I don't necessarily agree with that. So I mean, I realize you've built the budget for 25, but we do have room because once the county gives us that money, as you know, we can then we have to reallocate it.
We have
So
to
it's
work with
just-
the county on all these things. And so we, for example, if we want to put in our own buttons, we would get an estimate. We would go to the county and say, is this okay? They would probably want to hire the contractor. So this is not something that we can easily do as a library. I should tell you that. Putting up ballistic film, for one thing, it's going to be fantastically expensive and we'll never be able to afford it, but we'd have to go to the county to have that done. We could not just do it ourselves. So this is something that has to be done in conjunction with the county. They own the buildings.
I just want to make sure that if nothing is happening, we are not the reason nothing is happening, right? From whatever corner we occupy, we need to make sure that we are trying to move the ball forward, even if we're not reaching anything fruitful. So I will make a note to bring this up again next month, see where we're at. Do we have any progress? Because we have to keep working on this.
The cameras are going to be installed. Additional cameras are going to be installed soon. So we can certainly give you an update on that. I would say that that's something that we have some control over, some say over, because we own the cameras ourselves.
Yeah. Thank you.
Can I also just point out that we have monthly administrative meetings, and this is discussed every month in our meetings. We talk about what can we do, where are we at, what's the next step, are there any funds that we're going to be able to pull if we can get it to go. So this is ongoing with Michael and us every single month. It's a constant conversation. This has not fallen off of our radar ever.
We did just also at this past meeting, which was on Tuesday, task our new security and facility manager at the Lexington Park Library to look into the buttons and find out what's needed. So, and we were planning to use FOL funds probably for that, just as we're using FOL funds, I believe, for the extra cameras. So
great. Thank you. Any other new business?
Just a little bit, and this gets back to the audit itself. There were two places in the audit where they referenced actually two different numbers about in the 60,000 and funding the OPEB account, and we have excess. I would like to see us put $50,000 in there now and $10,000 a month for the next 5 months, finish out the year.
We gave you those figures. We did not, and they do not, as an audit, factor in restricted funds. We had no surplus that was not part of the restricted funds this year. And I understand your frustration with funding the OPEB, but where's the money going to come from at $10,000 a month? You can cut staff, you can cut materials, you can cut programming. Those are the only fungible line items. You can't cut utilities.
I'm only proposing it for 5 months.
Where's the money going to come from?
How about the general fund?
We have about, as you saw on the budget, about $460,000. It is recommended that we have 2 months worth of rainy day fund. That's 1 month's worth. I think that I understand your frustration with this, but I think that if we have surplus that does not include restricted funds, as of, say, the end of June, when that audit period ends, and you'll know next September, November, that you put that, all of it, if there's any of it, into the OPEB, but we are funding on a pay-go basis that fund. No former employee is suffering. I don't want to see us in any way threaten the operations for the public. That's why we run the library, not to create some fund balance, not to have an OPEB. We run it for the public. And I do not wish to see this board approve anything that could possibly jeopardize operations to the customers who are using us now.
Well, my retort to that is, has the county ever missed a payment to us?
The fundings, sometimes they come late. Last year, they gave us the rest of the money at this time by mistake, and they said, just keep it. I mean, I don't think that we got to worry about them missing a payment or the state missing a payment. The question is, are we going to spend all that money for this year? And the answer is we don't know yet.
I'm proposing we spend leftover money from last year.
We don't have leftover money from last year.
Did I misread the audit?
So
No, we have unfunded.
Can we-
It's
unfunded balance.
restricted
what,
fund.
yes, can we contextualize what is the 60K that John is mentioning?
The audit does not look at our restricted funds when they say, oh, you came in with more money. We got a lot of money from the Friends last year, about $60,000, in fact. The audit doesn't say, oh, well, that's restricted. You can't spend that on the OPEB, which the Friends, I promise you, will not approve.
Okay.
So we had, once you threw in the restricted money, we were $1,000 in the hole, and we've given you those numbers several times.
That's the money we're using for the security measures. So the FOL money, that's where it is.
So I guess, John, as I'm trying to think all this through, what is the harm in waiting till we get closer to the end of the fiscal year to see what is left and then putting that in rather than put money in now when we're not quite sure how the next 6 months will go? What do you think about that?
Well, that would be my second choice. My first choice is we've got to take more seriously getting money into that account. That's our trustee obligation. And if you look at the history of what the auditors, not the auditors, I'm sorry, the actuaries say ought to be going in versus what we've been putting in. And I'm going back way before this board and probably a couple of previous boards. We've got a liability that's growing there day by day by day. And we missed out a good market. We didn't put anything of consequence in this last year. And we're proposing to delay again this year. I think we've got to be very, very careful that we understand what our obligations are as trustees for this account, because they are vastly different than what our obligations are as business people running the library.
Your
They're
first
a whole different
priority
heading.
is service to the public. That is why we run the library. That is your first priority.
No, I
No,
would
actually
suggest-
legally it's not. And legally, the reason we're trustees is because of the OPEB. That's why we're trustees. We're not a board of directors. We are trustees for that OPEB account.
No, library trustees
So,
were established.
please let me
before.
finish.
Library
So-
Hold on,
trustees were
Michael, please
established
let
before.
Judith,
So-
Michael, please let Judith finish. Then
We
the floor is
have
yours.
not only a legal obligation and a fiduciary obligation as the trustees of the OPEB account to adequately fund it, which is somewhere in the neighborhood of 70 to 90%. The other county agencies have been in the last year dumping money into OPEB to bring them up to where they're supposed to be. My problem with waiting till later in the spring is that John and I brought this up last spring to put $50,000 in, and we were voted down. There was only 2 yes votes and there were 5 no votes. So we brought this issue up again and again. The OPEB has to be funded with a plan, not haphazardly, or when we have a little bit extra money. It has to be funded with a plan annually, like other government agencies do. We don't have a plan. I drafted one some months ago and sent it out with no response to do a monthly contribution to the OPEB, which is the best dollar cost averaging for us as investors. Is we can put in $50,000 a year, or we could put in $10,000 a month, or some amount we decide on. But there needs to be a plan to address this growing deficit that will hurt our retired employees. if we get to the point where this plan is no longer sustainable. We ask for OPEB money in our budget, but we only ask for this year's operating. We don't ask for escrow. That's where we could have put in, instead of 97,000, we could put in 150,000. And we can still do that. We can change our budget after the allocation is received by the county to say, we're going to fund this year's money and we're going to start attacking the deficit. So that is our job as trustees, is to justify OPEB. We need a plan to do it, and we can keep kicking it down the road and nothing's ever done.
Well,
And then we're failing our fiduciary responsibilities, literally failing them, because we went to the class and asked these questions. Or we can have a plan and start addressing them.
see, here's
Hold on, John, let's go to Michael first.
Some history for you. First of all, we have asked for additional funds from the county commissioners to put into the OPEB, and we have been turned down every time. And I have done that 3 times. I see no reason to try again, because they're going to tell us the same thing. Your OPEB is fine. Thing 2, the responsibilities of the Library Board of Trustees was established in the 1940s by Maryland Code when there was no such thing as an OPEB. Your primary responsibility is not this fund. It is to serve the public through the library. Where's that money going to come from?
from the block grant that they give us
John,
for our
please,
budget.
John, please let
Where
Michael
is,
finish.
what line item is that going to come from?
We create a line item.
And then you're taking money away from either personnel, the collection, or programming.
All right, let me raise this to a higher level here.
Let's pause. Let's pause. I think everyone take a deep breath. Okay. Let's pause for a second. We are trustees of the library. We're also trustees of the OPEB account. We do not gather as a board every month to make sure retired library employees are okay, right? That is not the primary function, but we have a fiduciary duty to OPEB, as we are saying. I think that we don't need to get into a tornado of the same arguments time and time again. I think that we need to sort of move towards action and figure out what steps are we going to take, if any. We have a lot of competing priorities and we have very limited funds.
Well,
The money has to come from somewhere, right? And so we are making sacrifices. If we put money into OPEB, that's money that is not going to security measures, the collection, staff salaries, whatever the case may be.
let me just put this on a higher level. Let's go up to the federal level. I spent quite some time trying to find out what is a fiduciary with regard to a retirement plan. And I've got it somewhere in all my stuff that I save. But it basically said this: creating a retirement plan is an option for a business. You don't have to have it. But if you do have it, it takes precedence. It is your primary responsibility as a fiduciary. You can change the plan, you can discontinue the plan, but once you have it, you have a fiduciary responsibility to support the plan. Now, if we had never had a plan, an OPEB account established, we don't have any headaches, but it was established.
Right. So is there a call to action for today?
I'm looking, and Michael's correct. The things that you could change, the reason we have, if we look overarching why we have an excess and the things that we could change, that we could take that money from, I'm not willing, and I think none of us at this table are willing to cut staff at all. We're not looking to cut staff salaries. We've done a whole lot of work to make sure we're bringing staff salaries up. So we can look at cutting collection, which is not an unreasonable thing, but the librarians won't like it. I mean, understood, because we want to provide the best collection possible. We could cut collection to put into retirement. The other thing we could look at, we can take, if we cut collection in the budget and then use Friends of Library to supplement the collection. That works, I think, with strains. $1,000 that you could take under equipment, that you could look at that equipment pieces and take that into the library and things like that. But that's only $16,000. That's not going to get us very far. So this budget is very tight. it does not have a lot of play. The money has to come from somewhere. If Friends of Library is able to sustain some of these budget items and we can add the line item, that's what we need to look at doing. I think that's not unreasonable, but it has to come from somewhere. And we're not guaranteed $60,000 every year for Friends of Library. I was at the book sale last year. I worked the book sale last year. It was insane because people were like, we're finally back after COVID. I don't think we're going to get $70,000 from the book sale this year. So that's the thing to think about for planning for next year. We're not going to have that overflow.
Thank you. You should also realize that the Friends may not have book sales in the future.
Yeah, that was a
They're
huge
aging out.
problem.
They may simply stop doing them and try to set up their own bookstore, which will require paying employees and having a rental space. You cannot count on that as funding. I'd like to say that the foundation can support things, but we tend to use that money for something fairly large and not for just the collection. We are paying for 185% of those retired employees who are on our health budget out of that money already. They are taken care of. Please do not take something away from the public. The collection, I keep talking about trying to expand the amount of money that's going into it. Costs are up. We don't have as much in the way of new books as we did 5 years ago.
To that, I would only add that we have way more liability on the OPEB account than we did 5 years ago.
All right. I
What's
think
what's the
Let's not
priority?
forget, we have the unfunded balance, which could easily take a $50,000 withdrawal or half, 25 out of the existing budget and 25,000 out of the unfunded budget. The Board of Education just basically emptied their unfunded balance to fund their OPEB and a couple other things. I think the sheriff's office did the same thing. So basically the unfunded balance is 50,000 out of 450, still leaves us plenty of operating room, and it doesn't touch the budget at all. And then from this point forward, we put the OPEB funding into our annual budget. Doesn't matter what the commissioners say, because as we've been told, we create the budget. They only give us the allocation and we create that budget. It's always guns versus butter. Everybody is short of money. We have to make those tough choices.
All right, we're going to leave it here for now. I think we need to move forward. These are important conversations. I appreciate the passion. Everyone is right, and let's everybody listen to each other, and we'll find a good way forward. Michael, do you want to go over dates to remember before we transition?
Yes, please. Several dates for you to remember. Get that back out here. So the mobile library ribbon cutting has been moved to January 30th. The FOL luncheon, speaking of the FOL, is on February 3rd. It's $32. It is at the Episcopal Church on Route 4. And there's a very lovely brunch and there's a presentation. If you would like to attend, shoot me an email if you haven't seen an invite from the friends, and I will give you that information. February 13th is Maryland Library Legislative Day. And there's a breakfast that begins at 7:30 a.m. in Annapolis, where you will meet friends, trustees, and employees of the other 23 library entities. We have a proclamation in the Senate and in the House of Delegates. And then I go meet individually with the Southern Maryland delegation. And trustees are welcome to attend this if you would like to go to Annapolis on February 13th and join me there and talk with your legislators. You'd be more than welcome to. On February 29th is the Southern Maryland delegation reception. And That is an evening where the delegations from the 3 counties meet in Annapolis, and it's a reception, and various businesses and entities like libraries host it and talk with them. The Chamber of Commerce sends a bus up there, or they have the past several years when it's been non-COVID. And I get on the bus. It's a good time to talk to our county commissioners, and you can buy tickets to the chamber. So if you're interested in doing that as an evening event, we typically leave about 5 and get back about 11. So if you would like to do that, let me know. Again, you'd be welcome to join me for that. So those are your updates.
All right, thank you, Michael. Do we want to take a break before we move into closed session?
All right, we will have the mobile library started up, and you can go out there and see it if you have not had the opportunity already.
Do you want to make the motion to go into closed session after the break so we can just turn everything off?
Yeah, let's take a 5-minute break, and then we'll come back and make the motion, and that'll be that. So it's 11:23. We're back to 11:28. Question. You go. Okay. All right, so we do have a quorum. So why don't we get moving with the motion to close the meeting? We are going to move into closed session. We will not be returning to open session after this. So to inform the members of the public, and we are moving into closed session to discuss a employee personnel matter affecting one person under Maryland Code 3-305B1. So we're ready to entertain a motion to close this meeting.
May I make just a
Please.
comment here
Yes.
before we do that? We cannot close a meeting out. We have to come back in open and then close.
There.
The county commissioners do it all the time. They don't go back into open session. You don't have to go back into open session. You can just say the meeting's over.
Okay.
So moved.
All right. Thank you, Judith.
Second.
Okay. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed or abstained? No. Okay. We're moving into closed session.